It was exactly 60 years ago today that John Coltrane and his fellow musicians went to Rudy Van Gelder's recording studio for a session. It was the 9th of December 1964. On this date, within a few hours, they recorded what has now become one of the most iconic albums in jazz history, A Love Supreme. A Love Supreme is a suite in 4 parts, which lasts about 33 minutes. And what we now hear on the album are all first takes, except for part 2, for which the second completed take was chosen. There are 2 things about the performance that I'd like to point out. First, there is this famous 4-note motif in part 1, which is basically a blues riff. Jimmy Garrison on bass plays it first, and then Coltrane plays this riff. And he plays it in all 12 keys with no particular order. So he randomly plays it in all 12 keys, but he manages to cover all 12 keys. So if there's a message, one might say that this message is to be heard in all 12 keys, is to be heard everywhere. It's a universal message, so to speak. And then there is part 4. It took me a while to figure out how it works. The thing is, it's not based on a musical structure. Instead, it's based on the poem by John Coltrane himself. So his phrases, his improvisation, follows the structure of the poem. And on record, we hear John reciting the poem, reading the poem through his saxophone, so to speak, word by word, syllable by syllable. You can actually read along the text with the record if you want to. The album Love Supreme was released in January 1965. After that, John Coltrane would further develop his music, eventually becoming more and more avant-garde. His now so-called classic quartet broke up at a certain point. Sadly, not even 3 years after recording his masterpiece, John Coltrane died in 1967. His music has influenced generations of musicians, not only jazz musicians, ever since. So today, let's celebrate the 60th anniversary of this historic recording session. Thanks John, McCoy, Jimmy, and Elvin.